Good morning. Good morning. So what I wanted to speak about quickly today is omission of facts. Omission of facts. Let's take a look at what that means. From Psych Central, www.psychcentral.com, it says, what is lying by omission? Lying by omission is the deliberate act of leaving out important details so the truth is skewed or misrepresented. It's the counterpart of lying by commission, using false direct statements. So when we go here, back to this, we all know the first written statements that were put down. You know, Darren and Dana came home. The boys are playing in the neighborhood, kids outside. Same thing that Gorsuch said, that the kids were playing. You know, Jonathan was playing with him. I was finishing up dinner. Damon came home, and Devin called, and I told him to be home soon. We were going to eat. Look at all these details that she remembers. She was finishing up dinner. Damon came home. She remembers the call. I told him to be home soon. She remembers what she said, that they were going to eat. Darren played with the baby. You remember what Darren was doing. And Dana, while I pulled everything together to eat, Devin came home. We all ate dinner together. After we ate, we cleaned all the plates. Let me get back up here. I was changing Drake while Darren put everything in some containers for leftovers. She remembers all this detail. We talked a little about how we were happy we were at the shop. We've been busy for the past 3 weeks. We hoped it would continue since work had been slow for a couple months. Devin and Damon asked if they could play with one of their friends, Jonathan, a little longer, so we said okay. Darren, Dana, and I just sat around and watched a little TV. Later, I'm not sure the exact time, I asked Dana to drive my sister home because I wasn't feeling too well. This is the first time that we hear that Darlie wasn't feeling well that night. It's the only time that we hear Darlie wasn't feeling well that night. Remember, Dana had been at that house off and on for the past 2 weeks. But here she says she wasn't feeling well. But we don't hear that anywhere else. I laid on the couch because I wasn't feeling well. The rest, that was the only time she wasn't feeling well that night, is when she wanted Dana to go home. Dana, however, says that she wanted to be with her boyfriend. So we have two conflicting stories there as to why Dana left that night. I think it was because that Darren and Darlie were arguing, and Darlie just didn't want anybody around while that was happening. Beza said the same thing, that she walked into the kitchen that night while Darlie was preparing dinner, and that Darlie was throwing a fit. She was literally sharpening her knives, is what Beza told me. Which doesn't mean anything in particular, but it just, considering what happened later on that night. She's not sure of the exact time. She's not sure of the exact time here when Darren asked, she asked him to drive home. The boys brought down their blankets and pillows, asked if they could watch TV. I said yes. They came downstairs, played on the floor in front of the TV with Drake while I made some popcorn. She remembered that. She remembers 20 or 25 minutes later, Darren came in and sat down with us while we watched TV. Drake started to get fussy, so I made him a bottle. She remembered that. Soon after the boys fell asleep, Darren took the baby upstairs and put him into his crib and came back downstairs. We talked about a few problems we were having with the car and the boat and had a few words between us. Now, she does say we had a few words between us. Since I had the baby and I've been having some depression, I told Darren I was depressed because I hadn't been able to take the boys anywhere, blah, blah, blah. He told me he loved me and asked me if I wanted him to sleep downstairs with him because I wanted to stay up a little and watch TV. She wasn't feeling well. She wanted her sister to go home, but she wanted to stay up. If you're not feeling well, you want to sleep, generally. I told him no because I didn't think he would be able to sleep on the couch and get any sleep. I had been sleeping on the couch the past week or so, on and off, because the baby slept in our room, in the crib, and when he moved, he would wake me up. He just started doing that when he was 7 months old. He didn't do that any other time. Darren and I lay together for a little while and then decided to go to sleep because he had to work the next day. This was around 12:30 or 1 o'clock. I'm not sure. He kissed me and said he loved me, and I told him I loved him and would see him in the morning. Started to get sleepy. Then she talks about the attack. She starts talking about the attack. Now, she was very detailed in the first statement, you know. And even Darren's statement, same thing. Nowhere in this do they mention, but years later when, around 2002, her appeal started to, her appeal time was coming up. So Darren changed his story. Darlie also changed her story. In 94, I spoke to a person. That name needs to be there. Period. That's bullshit. That person, the name needs to be there. Talks about where he was speaking to Robbie Key. Multiple people. Those names need to be named because this is a lie. This whole affidavit is a lie, except where he says his wife asked him for a separation. In the late evening of June 5, 1996, you know how they minimize. I had a verbal disagreement. Now, that's an argument. A verbal disagreement can be an argument. They didn't mention this verbal disagreement in the first written statements. During that discussion, my wife asked me for a separation. Okay? This kid, he changed his story in 2002. Omission of a material fact is any failure by a person to disclose the material facts known to him or her upon reasonable inquiry would be known to him and her. Omission of a material fact may be a basis to declare a statement false. In a sense, the first reports that they gave to police was false. They were asked to recall the events of that night, and she did a very good job of providing detail as to what was being cooked, what was going on, who put what away, who did what. I asked Danelle, and I can show this if I need to. I could ask Danelle. She said the police weren't doing their job. They should have been helping more. Blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, they weren't given the right information from the get-go. She goes, well, what do you mean? I said, well, in their first statements, they left out the fact that they asked for a separation. Right? And first, Danelle told me, well, Darlie couldn't remember things that well. And I said, well, she remembered this detail, that detail, this detail, that detail. Danelle told me that Darren and Darlie not mentioning that she had asked for a separation that night was irrelevant. Let that sink in. She said it was irrelevant. I said, well, them eating popcorn would be irrelevant. That doesn't mean anything. And she just said that Danelle stood firm on the fact that they left out, both of them left out in their first statements that there was a separation. The police were trying to help solve the crime. If the police knew ahead of time, if they knew right away, if they would have known right off the rip that those two were arguing and to the point of marital separation, and then an hour later their children come up dead, they would know it was an inside job. They would know that somebody snapped. That's why they chose to leave it out. Darren, in my opinion, has been covering for Darlie for all these years. I honestly believe through what Tina Church, the private investigator hired by Darlie Key to write a book on their innocence, I firmly believe that when she told me, Tina Church told me this, that Darren told her that when he came down them stairs, he grabbed Darlie and he shook her. And you can kind of hear, you can kind of hear it. He knew what she did. And you can listen to him in the last defense say, I did it for Darlie. I did it for Darlie. I did it for Darlie. As far as that affidavit, I did it for Darlie. And now if you look at all the free Darlie groups and all the groups, they're all so focused on Darren, I'm surprised he even speaks to that family anymore. I mean, really. But, you know, like I said, omission of a material fact. Why did they lie about getting into an argument and her asking him for a separation before he walked upstairs? And she had always threatened Darren with divorce before this crime. And he would just back down and do whatever she wanted. My opinion in this night is that she asked Darren for a divorce and he got sick of hearing it. And on the way up them stairs, he said, good, okay, we'll separate. So in the morning, you can get your shit and get the fuck out of my house. That's what I think happened. If I can't have them, no one will. Serilda was a CASA director. She worked for Children's Services. Can you imagine Darlie trying to gain custody after a divorce? With Darren with a successful business? A mother that was raised him up that's a child services worker? Darlie would not have got custody. She had actually no work experience, nothing. She was under Darren's. Darren took care of her since they got together. She would have not won. That's the omission of the fact in this case. And it started out with the very first police report that was given to the police, the Rowlett Police Department. It started out right off the rip with a fucking lie. And just as of a few days ago, Danelle says that, you know, that Waddell let the intruder walk out of the house. Well, I'll tell you this. I will tell you this. Yesterday I had a phone call with Mrs. Gorsuch. I always say that. From across the street there. The ones that William Gorsuch died. He passed away. I found his number, and his wife called me back. And she does not want it to be. I asked her specifically if I could use the clip, and she told me she didn't want it out there publicly. But I did share the clip with Pamela Lakes Collins. So she's first of all, she believes that Darlie's guilty. And a lot of people in that neighborhood feel like Darlie's guilty. I didn't get into a long conversation with her because once she said that she didn't want it aired, I just, there was just no sense in me getting it further because if she would have, she doesn't want it aired. But the fact of the matter is, I was told by someone who looked out the window, that what they said in court was exactly what they saw. One police car, period. Going to the source. So for them to even reach, that is a lie. And I will say this, Danelle doesn't like to be called a liar, but I listened closely to what she said before she said this. She said, I talked to Darlie last night and... Okay, so Darlie told her this. She's repeating something. They want you to believe that Waddell at Rowlett Police Department would just let an intruder walk away. I talked to the source. I talked to the lady that lived across the street. She doesn't live there anymore. And the way they saw it is exactly what happened. There was one police car, not two. See, supporters will tell you, no, that was Officer Walling. No, there was one police car. Officer Walling got there in a different car. Nobody could have ran around the side of the house. Nobody could have ran out the house without them seeing. They were looking, literally, before Waddell even got out of his car. They were looking. So, So for me, for the rest of probably this month, I've got 2 surgeries back to back, starting next week and then the week after that, and then I'll be in recovery. So I might not be doing too many videos, but it hasn't stopped me in the past. But I just don't know how much recovery I'm going to be in and what kind of sedation they're going to have me on. But trust that I am all over this. And until the Innocent Project either backs out or proves they're innocent, I'm going to be there to stop this misinformation. It is misinformation, no matter if she's guilty or not. It's misinformation being spread about the case, and it's not fair to us true crimers that like to look at true crime and decide the case for ourselves. If you don't have the right tools, you can't build the right image. So again, got surgery on my back, and well, not surgery on my back, but they're going to start the epidural, and then I've got surgery on my arm coming up. So I don't know what kind of recovery I'll be in. But I'll be around and I'll be watching. If you don't hear from me, I'm watching. Justice for Devin and Damon.